So today we heard the details of the new evidence Conor McGregor is seeking to introduce as part of his appeal against the verdict of a civil rape trial last year. And I think it's fair to say they were bombshell claims that would go to the heart of his appeal. What did we hear today?
Yeah, so the case is before the Court of Appeal, and it's a different judge this time, Justice Seamus Noonan, and basically part of, as you said, what Conor McGregor wants to be introduced as part of his appeal against this finding in the civil case is that there were two new witnesses who claimed that they saw another man assaulting Nikita Hand on the late on Sunday night and into the early hours of Monday morning. This was after she had returned from the Beacon Hotel where she said she was raped by Conor McGregor. So today it was heard that there's affidavits from a woman who was described as a Miss O'Reilly and her partner, and they were living across the road from Nikita Hand at the time, they said. And basically they say that so it was December 8th, 2018, when Nikita Hand said she was raped by Conor McGregor, and she returned home, and the Miss O'Reilly and her partner are believed to have said that she was looking out the window and she could see from an upstairs window that Nikita Hand was being attacked by her then partner Stephen Redmond. But she said that what it looked like to her was that she was being kicked and punched by Mr. Redmond, her then partner, but that she couldn't actually see Nikita Hand on the ground. And basically this was being used as an explanation as why Nikita Hand would have gotten the bruises.
So I mean, this evidence wasn't, the judge described it in its broadest terms. It's coming from Samantha O'Reilly and her partner Stephen Cummins.
Yeah.
And it's not typical, I suppose, in a court of appeal that new evidence is introduced. I mean, normally what an appeal is focused on is, I suppose, legal issues.
Yeah.
So you don't get to retry a whole case again, typically.
No.
In an appeal, what you get to hear is a discussion of a point of law, and typically appeals would involve issues to do with the direction given to a jury, for example, for a judge, or some piece of evidence that may or may not have been admitted for some reason. So typically appeals go on that sort of issue.
Yeah.
However, it also is possible to introduce new evidence under very sort of strict conditions, and those conditions were outlined primarily by Nikita Hand's team, who are not just, they clearly disputed the evidence given as lies, but they also said beyond that as well, they shouldn't be admitted for a number of reasons.
Yeah, exactly. So Justice Noonan had said that the evidence was relevant, but that it needed assessment for its credibility because this hasn't actually been introduced. They're seeking to introduce it as part of the appeal. So, as you said, Nikita Hand's counsel then got up and they said that Nikita Hand has given a sworn affidavit to say that this was lies, that they would also try and seek one from her then partner, Stephen Redmond, and they basically questioned when this evidence came to light. So it was claimed that Mr. Riley sent a message to Conor McGregor on Instagram, and that it happened. This all new evidence came to light after the civil case had concluded in November when the jury returned its verdict finding against Conor McGregor. So Nikita Hand's counsel are questioning when this evidence was introduced because basically the evidence has to have been, existed at the time of the case. Yeah,
so I mean, I think the issue would be that if that evidence was available and it wasn't introduced at the time of the case, then that really would fall on Conor McGregor's team. That if this is available to them, they chose not to introduce it for whatever reasons, or they didn't pursue it, then that couldn't, in a sense, that couldn't be held against Nikita Hand.
No.
And so they, in Nikita Hand's team, I think said that it wasn't clear when there was an email, I think, sent to on Instagram to Conor McGregor and to his sister, Erin.
After the case, I suppose the claim is that the evidence must have existed at the time of the case, but that it wasn't available. That there was no, basically that they weren't aware of it. So the judge has to be happy that this did exist, that it didn't come to light after all this was done. But at the same time, it existed, but also that it wouldn't have been possible for McGregor's team to avail of it. And I suppose they're trying to say that they didn't know about it and that's why they weren't introducing it then.
Yeah.
So, and there's also, I suppose, other issues in that, it needs to have, as you said, existed, but also that it needs to have been of relevant importance, that it could have an important bearing on the case.
Yeah, and I think the judge outlined that in this case, that obviously if we look back on the trial, and not to go over all of the specific details, but one of the most stark bits of it was the description of the physical injuries suffered by Nikita Hand. And the judge explained how that does, if this evidence, if there was evidence of how these injuries were caused, it would be relevant to McGregor's defence.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose it was also referenced by the judge today that the injuries that, the jury did refer to this booklet of injuries that were provided by Gardaí constantly throughout the trial. And as you said, the injuries were a big part of the case. So I suppose he made the point that if there is a other explanation as to how Nikita Hand may have got these injuries, that is relevant, but it needs to be deemed, the credibility needs to be tested, and he's going to do that in the next hearing, essentially.
Yeah. Now, also, in order for this to be allowed, it has to be regarded as credible evidence.
Exactly, yeah.
And they said, I think the term used was credible, but not incontrovertible.
Exactly, yeah.
So I suppose that means that the first test will be the test of credibility.
Yeah.
And then it can still be it doesn't have to be incontrovertible, so it can still be tested again, for example. But it has to be regarded as being relevant. What did the next hearing, were we given a date in particular?
Yeah, so July 1st is the next date that we were given. And basically it's set up for a 2-day hearing. And they're going to actually, the judge will decide on whether the new evidence can be introduced and the appeal will be heard in the 2 days. So I assume the evidence will be decided on first and then the appeal will be heard. And McGregor is looking for a retrial, basically. So so that will come next. And I suppose there's other elements. I know you mentioned at the start that generally these cases are tested based on legal reasons. And he is also trying to introduce questions about the original judge, Alexander Owens, and how he directed the jury, and also I think certain ways in which things were line of questions was put to McGregor while he was on the stand.
Yeah.
So that's also going to be part of his appeal.
Yeah, for want of a better description, that's probably a more traditional aspect of the appeal, where they will focus on decisions that a judge made. I think in this case, it's been reported anyway previously that the McGregor's legal team are going to highlight the fact that certain note when McGregor was questioned by the police by the Gardaí in regards to this. It didn't ever amount to a criminal case, as we heard during the trial. But he was questioned under oath he was questioned under caution, and he replied no comment a number of times. And it's been reported that would form part of the appeal as well.
Yeah.
Did we hear much from Nikita Hand's team? They obviously clearly said that this was lies.
They did, yeah. They basically said that Nikita Hand has sworn an affidavit, which is a legal statement, to say that this was lies, that they would try and seek the same from her then partner, Stephen Redmond. And they also said, that they would be cross-examining this evidence. Obviously, if this is allowed into the appeal, these witnesses will have to come forward, and that they will be able to cross-examine. They, as we just discussed, they were just questioning whether, it has to be decided if this is credible and also relevant. Nikita Hand wasn't there herself, neither was Conor McGregor or James Lawrence, but James Lawrence is also appealing the costs. So he was found not liable for assaulting Nikita Hand, but costs were not he didn't win his costs, basically because it was found that McGregor used his claims as part of his defence, and obviously McGregor lost his case. So Nikita Hand was not ordered to pay James Lawrence cost. Obviously, we've heard before how the costs were in excess of 1.3 million, and that's all on McGregor. So James Lawrence is appealing that aspect of the case as well. So that was also mentioned today. So basically her defence or her legal team made it clear that they will be challenging this to the full extent of their abilities.
So the stakes are very high, I suppose, for McGregor and his ongoing reputation. So it will be heard then in July. Is it over a 2-day period?
Yeah, it will be heard in July over a 2-day period. As I was saying, there's going to be, a decision on whether to admit this new evidence. And then when that is made, I assume then the appeal will be heard. So they're going to both happen over this 2-day period.
Okay.
And I imagine, I don't know if McGregor and Nikita Hand will be there then, but I suppose, there will be, if this new evidence is allowed, there will be obviously those witnesses called. And, it is, I suppose, as you said, these appeals are usually generally more kind of straight and, we essentially based on what's been said before. So this is interesting, and as it's been described today, was quite shocking to hear the claims. But I suppose,
normally in these appeals it would be just both legal teams. You just have a barrister from each side making legal submissions, which tend to be quite dry given their nature. But this certainly is going to be a different matter, and it's going to generate a huge amount of publicity.
It will, yeah. And I suppose there's been such publicity about McGregor and both Nikita Hand in terms of, like how she's been regarded as a voice for, people speaking out against violence against women. So, it's going to be, it's been generating a lot of headlines and will continue to do so. And I guess, the costs around it are also eye-watering because, as I said, there's been the €1.3 million legal bill. But there's also been, previously we've heard in court how McGregor has been ordered to pay 100,000 of the 250,000 damages that were awarded against him. I think the rest has been put on hold pending this appeal. So there's just, as you said, it's high stakes and there's a lot of talk around it and a lot of money involved. And obviously, Nikita Hand, she was vindicated after the original verdict. And, as her legal team said today, she completely denies this new evidence and is going to continue to fight. So McGregor's also keen for for a retrial. So it just remains to be seen. But this case will continue to create headlines, I think.
It is, and it's interesting that it wasn't a feature in his interview with Tucker Carlson, the US media personality, let's put it that way. That didn't feature. So
no.
Okay, well look, no doubt we'll be coming back to this and featuring when doing more podcasts when this appeal does finally get heard.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Niall.
Thanks, Eimear.
I'm Nicola Tallant and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.